Hey guys, I'm a little bit under the weather, so my voice is going to be even less palatable than normal, but I wanted to get a video out to you because I recently heard a release that I had been wanting to hear for about 20 years now. A lot of people ask me what my guilty pleasure bands are. What do I like? Not what do I think is good analytically, but what am I actually into? And there is a lot of overlap, but as far as stuff that I like that I acknowledge is not inherently good, a band that I've always liked since I was a kid is Broken Hope. And that's a band that has been lampooned in the death metal underground for many years. If you talk to people like King Foley, you will hear some hilarious stories about them. But anyway, I know that it's essentially pop music with death metal flourishes and death metal atmosphere and technique. But I don't really care. I put it on and I like the riffs. I like the style. I like the atmosphere, especially of the first two records. I think the production on The Bowels of Repugnance has an atmosphere that I always go back to. I really like the murky vibe of that one. As the band progressed, it really became a band that was falling apart at the seams, where there were two defining writers who did not see eye to eye on how to make death metal. And you have Jeremy Wagner, who is currently running the band, who believes that death metal needs to be simple and powerful, and you have Brian Griffin, who wanted it to be a little bit more progressive, a little notier, a little bit more expressive, and it's a fine line. Having done what I believe was, technical, progressive, whatever you want to call it, death metal before, I know that you don't want to lose the inherent message of what death metal is, the vital aspects of the primitive nature of death metal. You don't want to lose by cluttering it with too many unrelated ideas or flourishes that are inherent to, individual songwriting narcissism. You don't want to do that. You want to present the idea of death to the audience, and the more you litter it with stuff that doesn't matter and is just for show, the more it resembles the theatrics of rock music. And I understand that. That being said, if you go too far in one route, you end up with stuff that is just inherently uninteresting to listen to, like war metal. And if you go the other route, you wind up being like Tomb Mold, who really fucking blow ass, and I have no idea why are popular. But prior to breaking up, they put out the Loathing record, which is one of my favorites, and that's one of the few moments where I think there was actual synergy within the band, where the styles of both players worked, and there were elements in the songs where I could hear that they came together, instead of having it be, this is the Jeremy Wagner song and this is the Brian Griffin song, which became painfully obvious in the release afterwards, Grotesque Blessings, which unfortunately showcased the worst aspects of both writers, where Jeremy Wagner's writing got more simplistic and stupid, and Brian Griffin's writing got sillier and unnecessary. And then they broke up and really shouldn't have gotten back together, but Jeremy Wagner is running the current iteration of the band. And immediately after they broke up, Jeremy Wagner had his own project called Earthburner, which didn't do anything, and Brian Griffin did this, Incivism, which had not been present online until recently. And this release came out in 2003. I had wanted to hear it for a long time because I do enjoy Brian Griffin's tonality and what he does. Just the things I pick up that are inherent to him. One of the things that he does that is very uncommon is he harmonizes in fourths, which is, you don't hear a lot in death metal. You will hear harmonizing in fifths a lot, which is prevalent in like Death and Nile, and pretty much the only other harmony you ever hear is in thirds. You hear that all the time. And he harmonized in fourths, which is a very powerful sound, but atypical. And I would like to see it explored more, because that thud of a fourth, it doesn't have to be relegated to just palm mute chugs. When you do it as a harmony, it ends up creating, it changes the root note, where it feels it feels like the song is progressing when it doesn't actually progress in any way. It just gives another color that is darker and lower than what the melody actually is. And it kind of tricks you into hearing it in a different way, which is nice, because it doesn't make you have to be overly adventurous to give a different color to a passage. And I recognize that Broken Hope, for the most part, was pop music, and this is that's the same. You're gonna get the same thing here. What this is I don't want to say it's a logical extension of Broken Hope. I don't know what I was anticipating. I guess I thought that there would be greater freedom, given that Jeremy Wagner isn't holding this project back. But it still seems kind of rooted in a less interesting take on Loathing, where it still feels like the tonality is there, where the guitars are tuned to D, which is a cool register to hear metal in after all this time. If you're going to make metal now, or death metal anyway, you're probably going to down tune really low. I'm guilty of that as well. I understand that it's a cheater's way to be heavy, and it does sound sinister to tune low, but you lose a lot of your melodic backbone. You have to be pretty creative to draw melody out of guitars that are in that register. So it's nice to hear guitars tuned to D again. As far as for what comprises this release, if you like stuff like Disfigured's Prelude to Dementia, it's kind of similar to that, but without the obvious jump the fuck up parts. It's kind of angular sounding because of the tonality to it. There's a lot of tremolo picking interspersed with chord chugs. It's your token mid 90s, late 90s type of death metal, kind of like Dying Fetus, but without really haphazard songwriting. So it doesn't have any kind of inherent value, really. It doesn't have a very declarative statement to it. The second track has a motif that really outstays its welcome. It will not get out of my head in the worst of ways. The third track has a tonality to it that is a little bit more expressive than what I'm used to hearing from Brian Griffin, where the harmony that he uses is not a fourth, it's not a third. I know the interval, but I'm not that great at giving music theory terminology to you guys, but it's atypical, and I would like to see it. I would have liked to have seen this band give me a full length to see that being explored a little bit more. Unfortunately, we're not going to get to do that because he is now the front of house sound engineer for Lamb of God, and what a fucking job that's got to be, because there's nothing you can do to make that band not sound like shit. But back to what's going on with this. There's a break in one of the songs where everything stops, and then there's like a part that kind of reminds me of like Scale the Summit, where the backbone of it is that tonality that you've heard from Police's Every Breath You Take, which it's fine. It's the same tonality on Death's Spirit Crusher. You know it when you hear it. It's kind of a cheap way to get an emotionally cloying passage out, and then it just stops completely and then goes right into an unrelated part. So there is all the pitfalls that you see in bad death metal writing here. The melodies they're catchy. It's something that you are going to remember, so it does have that going for it. The reason I think that it should be heard is because I think that, given that this is his last creative output, and that it does have a small footnote in the world of death metal writing, it's a shame that it had not been able to be heard until now, and I think it deserves to be heard, because he did just stop doing any kind of metal in the performing sense or writing sense, and you haven't heard from him aside from having to look for what he's doing. But he had a similar career trajectory as Eric Rutan, where he was like the second fiddle to a popular death metal band, did his own metal band for a little bit, then did music production, but whereas Eric Rutan has much greater visibility, you don't hear anything about Brian Griffin, and if you try to look him up, thanks to fucking Family Guy, you're not going to find shit. But thankfully, hopefully, he does have a lucrative career making Lamb of God palatable to assholes. But yeah, I think this does deserve to be heard, given his history with death metal. It's not going to reinvent the wheel. It's not an inherently good release. It doesn't have the, if you're going to look at the positive aspects of Broken Hope, it's not catchy enough for pop infused death metal fans to want to gravitate towards it, and it's not adventurous enough to make its own declarative statement as a band. It just simply exists, but given that it's his last recorded output, I think it deserves to be heard. So feel free to check it out if you want. If you're into the band, if you're into Broken Hope, and you don't want to admit it, I totally get it, but it's out there now if you do want to hear it. So thanks for listening.